Alright guys, when we last left off, I had just finished painting the frame and I was getting ready to install the axles. Let me show you what I've got to do before I get those axles installed. I'm working on the rear disc brake conversion for the Dana 60 back here. And you can see these are ginormous drums that it's got on it. And on this side, I have already put on the rotors. Now I haven't put the caliper on yet because the calipers that I got do not have the emergency brake provision. So that is a little lever right here that has a cam on it so that when it twists, it actually pushes the piston out and locks your parking brake. I would like to have a parking brake on those, so I'm going to send those back and I'm going to get the ones with the parking brake that I believe were designed for a 76 to 78 Cadillac Eldorado, I think. And then these rotors, I believe, are off of a GM truck. I'm not sure. These brackets are the only thing that are custom made, and these are made by, let's see, who did I get this from? I think it was 4x4lugnuts.com. I'll put a description here for whoever got it. There were no instructions that came with this kit, or if there were, I lost them, so I kind of had to figure it out on my own. So I wanted to get the one side done before I started filming so that I would kind of know what I was doing before I went ahead and attacked this side. But I would like to get a little bit more in depth on this than I normally would on some of these repairs. Usually I just kind of show you guys a little bit of the process. I'd like to show you a little bit more like a how-to on this because so many of you have vehicles very similar to this. So let's, first things first, we're going to have to pull out the full floating axle. Now the cool thing about these axles are that because this is a hub on the outside here, there are two separate bearings that hold it, which is where the term full floating comes from, because the axle is held entirely from the outside and supported with the two bearings. So all you have to do is remove these 8 bolts and then it slides right out. So let's do that first. Now I'm not exactly sure what was used on these brake shoes in 1979, so I'm going to wear a N95 mask so that I don't get any dust in my lungs. Now these shoes can wear grooves in the drum, so then when it comes time to take the drum off, you've got to get it over that little lip created by the shoe. It can be quite frustrating. I'm going to just start gently massaging it out by hitting it in like 3 points, here, here, and here, and then if it gets kind of off kilter here, I'll use a screwdriver or a chisel to wedge in. That way I can knock it out a little bit farther, but it should come out pretty straightforward. Let's see. Guys, that was a lot more difficult than it should have been. This was the first time I've ever had this happen where the seal was on so strong to the hub that it actually pulled the bearing off with it. Never seen that happen before. Let's move on to the next step. Let's see, the next step is going to be throwing this on the press, and then I need to press out all 8 of those studs so that I can then put the disc brake on. Let's get to it. Alright guys, I want to point out something interesting here. If you look at these wheel studs, the threading goes all the way to the very end. That was a little bit surprising to me when I initially pulled the hub off and was ready to press these studs out, because usually they look like this, where you've got the threads that go up a good portion of the way, but you've got a small flat spot on the top here. It's very strange to me how the studs can be different from one side to the other. Not exactly sure what work has been done to this rear end. Everything looked as though it had never been taken apart, but I just wanted to point that out to you before I press these out. Alright, here's the drum that we removed. This is the disc that we're going to be installing. It's very straightforward. You remove the drum, put the disc exactly in the same location, and then you use the same exact studs to press right through. Now if you're looking at the stud here, you see this outer portion is just slightly larger. That's the portion that actually centers the disc or the drum to the hub, and then you've got these little splines that catch on the hub, and that's what actually holds it in there. Now I have seen guys hammer these out when they don't have a press. That's obviously not recommended because it can damage the threads. And then the same goes for installation. I've seen guys just use the lug nuts to tighten it to help pull it through. Again, that's not recommended. If you don't have a press, find someone that's got one that you can borrow it. So let me get this disc onto the hub. We'll get these studs pressed back in. Now these wheel studs, they will self-center the hub to the disc, so the disc will align itself as you start to press it through. But even with that, for the first couple, I will go across back and forth so that it presses down nice and evenly. I also use, in this case, it's a 13/16 socket, because when the stud is being pressed down right here, all of the force is coming onto the edge and it'll tilt over like that. So I just scooch it back a little bit like this, put the socket in, and then press. Easy peasy. Alright guys, time to knock these races out. Alright guys, next step is to just install the bracket. The kit comes with new bolts. Now I don't have the torque specs for this nut. When I don't have the torque specs, generally if I'm reusing the bearings, I'll try and do it around a 1/16 of a turn past good and tight. So you screw it on, get it as far as you can go with just your hands, and then I'll go, instead of a quarter, instead of an eighth, I'll just go a 1/16 of a turn. If it's new bearings, I'll try and get it to about an 1/8 of a turn past where it's tight. And that's just to put enough of a preload so that as the bearings wear a little bit, it doesn't develop play. Now these teeth are a little bit mangled up. I think this side has had some work done to it. I don't think the other side has, because you can see that some of these tabs have been bent and then rebent out, and I didn't do all of those. So I'll flatten them out. You're not missing anything fancy down here. I'm just hammering it on the concrete to get all the tabs flat. If you don't do that, then you can have an issue where the outer nut doesn't quite tighten it. Oh yeah, look at that, it's missing one. Yeah, so someone's been in here. Now when it comes to knocking down these tabs, let me see if I get a better angle. So you want to look around and see which tab is going to be facing a flat portion of this nut. Now this outer nut, this one's not tight yet, so I'm just looking at the inner nut. So you find which one, and it looks like this top one here is pretty good, so I'm just going to hammer this one back. And once it starts to flatten, I'll just go in there and kind of press it down. There it is. Now that back nut is totally locked in. Now I can tighten down the outer nut. This socket doesn't quite fit perfectly. I'm not sure if it's for something else. This one's good, so then I bend it forward. There it goes. And that's it. Easy peasy. Alright guys, so the next step would be to install those calipers, but like I said, I am swapping those out for the parking brake calipers, so I'm going to go ahead and just install this as is for now. We do have the new 6-inch springs right over here. Those are the ones that Dunbar made. I don't think I told you the price on these last time. They were right around $500, and like I said, that was new main, and then all of these are the original. They were just re-arched to follow the curve that was required for the 6-inch. So I'm going to go ahead and get this installed now, and then I'll get the front end installed as well, and I have new brakes for that. Alright guys, it's time for the front brakes. You can see on the driver's side here I've already got the new rotors installed. Now these are not like modern vehicles where the rotors are floating. They're very easy, you just slide them on and off. In this case it's the same as the rear. We have to press out each one of these studs after removing the entire hub assembly. It's a little bit of a pain in the rear, but I haven't done the passenger side yet, so I'm going to go ahead and show you guys how it's done. Same as the rears. So let's get to it. Now I really like these brakes on these F-Series Fords, but they do have a little bit of a bad rap. And I think that that's because a lot of guys end up with sticking calipers. They'll have pad wear on the inside or outside, usually because you don't have enough high temperature grease on the tops and the bottoms where the actual caliper will float. So if it sticks and it doesn't want to retract, it'll end up wearing pretty bad on the outside. If it doesn't want to pull the floating caliper in, that's where you get excessive wear on the inside. In this case, the wear is pretty even. So the only thing you have to do to remove them, this is not the factory bolt. I'm not sure at what point this made it in there, but basically there's a little springed clip on the bottom here that you just have to hammer out, and then once you hammer this out, the entire assembly will just pop out. Let me get a better angle. So this is the little spring I was talking about. That sits right on top of here. It just helps keep tension on this little clip here. Now we can finish getting the hub and rotor off. Now it's practically impossible for you guys to see, but inside is a nut that has 6 keys that you need this special tool for. Some of them have 4, some of them have 6. I've got a kit over there that has 5 different styles for different style front axles. Now there is a locking ring behind it, so you need to make sure that one of the locking rings is not locking into it, and there's going to be a lot of grease, so it's going to be difficult to see. So you clear away the grease, make sure you bend the tabs up so that it's no longer locked, and then you go ahead and take this off. I've heard that you shouldn't use an impact while using this, but I've never heard a reasonable explanation for why not. So I have had to use an impact on almost every one of these that I've done, and I haven't had any issues. The good thing about an impact is that you can put the force on straight. When you're prying to the side, it's really easy for these to pop off. So let me make sure that these tabs are all good, and then should be good to go. Woo! Now let's get that ring out. Now this side, I don't know if I showed you or not. That's not loose yet. This side was terrible. So this is before, I only took off the outer locking nut. I haven't taken off the inside one yet. This one was in real bad shape. Luckily we have new rings coming in. So you see all the little teeth that stick out. One of those teeth is supposed to be bent in to help lock it. Let's see. Yeah, this is already super loose. It looks okay in there. I'm not sure. It's possible that it just wore loose over time. These bearings look fine. Alright. Let's get this rotor off. Alright guys, so this is my trusty Harbor Freight press. It is very cheap, but I've been telling myself for like 10 years that I'll buy a new one as soon as this one breaks, and it refuses to die. So it gets the job done. What's interesting is on the driver's side it had different wheel studs as well as on the rear. If you remember, on the rear one of them had the tall studs with the smooth portion, and then one of them had threads all the way to the end. The front is the same exact way. How ridiculous. Now you may remember when I did the 9-inch gear swap or the 8.8 gear swap, I always use my fine file here and just kind of make sure that there's no burrs or edges before I go ahead and press the new rotor to it. Now these rotors on the front are actually hub centric. So you see there's no movement from side to side on the rotor. That center of the hub is actually what aligns everything, as opposed to the rear, which are centered by the wheel studs. So that was why I was extra careful to make sure to get those wheel studs in crisscross the whole way on the rear. I'll still do it on the front. It's just a lot more important when they're not centered on the hub. You may be familiar with that with tires and wheels. They're either hub centric or lug nut centric. There might be another term for that and I'm not aware of. The reason I'm hitting all these in just a little bit is because they're a little bit loosey-goosey because they're so long. So I just want to make sure that they're started so that the press doesn't send them in all cockamamie. All right, so let's get these in. Ugh. Now when working with the press, sometimes you have to get a little bit creative because, again, same as on the rear where I use that socket in order to keep it from tilting while I was putting pressure on it. I'm just using, in this case, I don't know, what is this? Oh, this is the roll bar tubing for the trophy truck. And a little plate. Guys, check out the size of this bearing. This is what my brother would call beefy cheesy. This thing is huge. I gotta get this packed with grease, installed, and then I'll get the seal on. Guys, I don't mind difficult jobs. In fact, I kinda enjoy them. But I do not like greasy jobs. So frustrating. just a little bit stuck. Let's see what the problem is. Guys, we got a problem. Well, this will be good to show you. So, let's get this all the way clean. I didn't wipe this all the way down because that grease was looking pretty good. But we are having issues with the lip for the outer bearing. So I'm going to have to smooth out this little lip on the edge here. That's a bummer. That happens sometimes when the old bearing is worn and it walks a little bit. On the very end, it'll kind of mushroom out the steel, and then you just have to sand it down just a little bit. Break off that little lip for the bearing to slide on then. Otherwise, the torque will be all off, and then the bearing will wear out. This is 400 grit. Like I said, just enough to break off that little bit of a lip that the bearing is struggling to get over. Obviously, you could replace this whole part. I'm not 100% sure what it's called. The hub is what rides on this, so hub assembly, hub spindle, axle hub mount, something like that. But this should be fine. And if it's not, you can replace it later. Yeah, there it is. Nice. All right. Now I don't know what this is called, but it's a washer with a little tang on the end here to line it up. And what it does is it helps put even pressure on the bearing when it's being installed, so you can get the torque right. If you don't do that, then you have this piece spinning against it, and then you have the inner portion of the bearing spinning as well. No bueno. Now when I lay these down and clean them, I lay them down in the order that I'm going to be reinstalling them, just to make it a little bit easier. Now the torque setting on this, I couldn't find like from Ford the factory settings, so all I could find was from Dana, who made this front axle, and it was 50 foot-pound onto the bearing to preload it, and then you spin it and then loosen it, and then retorque it to 50. And that's the proper preload. It seemed a little bit high to me, but I'm not surprised because it's so heavy duty. And generally, the heavier duty something is, the higher the bearing preload is going to be. Oh yeah, you can feel that preload. Not dissimilar to doing the rear end gears. Oh wow, that's nice. Now someone is going to yell at me for using a torque wrench in reverse, but don't worry about it. This isn't a helicopter. Nice. I like that a lot. Now this had ding, 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 a lot of play. I think, good. All right, let's get this little ring in there. Now if you guys are following along and doing this on your own, the only thing I can recommend is take a whole bunch of pictures before you remove each piece so you remember how they go in. On this main gear here that goes on the axle shaft, the larger portion goes towards the vehicle. And then when you're installing it, sometimes it helps to go in on the inside and actually push the axle shaft because it can, I don't know if it does on this side, but it does on the other side where it kind of pops out. And then on the hub assembly, you'll see the larger gear, and where the larger gear mates with this gear, both of the gears are tapered a little bit to make it a little bit easier for them to engage. And you just want to make sure that you have that on the right side. Next is going to be the spring. And we've got this mammer jammer. Like I said, I don't remember what this is called, but well, let me clean this up a little bit. So you see, on the inside, the teeth are nice and smooth. On the outside, it's flat. It goes in this way so that it can lock in with those gears. Obviously, this is not shift on the fly. You're not going to have someone running along the side of the vehicle flipping it, so you will be stopped. But it does want to have nice, easy engagement, just for longevity's sake. This can be a bit of a pain because the spring will like to interfere with the splines, and then you've got two splines that you're trying to mate between. You've got the hub and you've got the axle. So you've got to get it on the hub first and make sure that the spring is in straight, and then you can figure out where the axle teeth line up. Oh. There we go. Whew. Ah. I did it back. I didn't do it backwards. But I did forget a step. I forgot. Obviously, this retaining ring. The retaining ring holds this in, not this. Rookie mistake. I'll leave this part in so you can see that this is real. Alright guys, round two. Center the spring, line up the teeth. Can't believe I did that, guys. Alright, well. So if you're wondering how these work, here's the outside. So obviously you've got free and locked. In this case, let's get it to, so now it's on free. When it's on free, you see here on the outer portion, these two keys line up with this. And then when it's free, you can see that this is pushed in all the way. So let's go ahead and push it in all the way. Now you're going to see the hub spin, but the axle does not. Then, when this spins to lock, like that, let's get it lined up just right. This is lock. Now you see these two keys, they're out all the way, like they would be, well, springs loaded. And then look, axle's locked. Real simple. Locked, unlocked. Locked, unlocked. Cool, huh? So it makes it easy to get it back installed because all you have to do is make sure that it's in one of the two positions, line up the keys, and then the hole should line up just fine. Now I polished the other one, but on this side I didn't do that because I think I'm going to try and source a new one because you can see the key is sun damaged pretty bad. So let me find the little tiny Allen head wrench and get this tightened up. Easy peasy. Lizard squeezy. Now don't let hubs scare you. It's really not that big of a deal. If you don't have a press though, you're definitely going to want to borrow one. I don't know the torque specs on this. If you notice when I was holding my wrench, I'll hold it really close to the head so that I can't over torque it, because I don't want to pull this open again. Now let's just make sure it works. Locked. Take a look at the axle. Locked. Unlocked. Free. Woo! Good! Alright guys, that's it for this week. I'm very happy that these brakes are done. I wish I could have got a little bit more finished, but this happens sometimes. You just run into problems. So brakes are good. Hopefully this was helpful if any of you have to do brakes on a Dana 60. Now the next episode is going to be a little bit different. There's a lot of changes going on around the shop here. I'll explain more with the next video, but I think you guys will like it. And that will hopefully be on time finally. I know this one's a little bit late, but hang in there. See you guys next week. Take care. Man, check out this sunset. I saw a bumper sticker in Denver. It said, "You know God is a Broncos fan, because sunsets are orange and blue."
Thanks for watching, everybody. Bye-bye.